Tonight, close your eyes and drift gently into a dream as we follow a little girl named Alice, who one lazy afternoon sat quietly beside her sister, wishing for something exciting to happen, when a curious white rabbit with pink eyes ran by in a hurry, glancing at a pocket watch and whispering that he was late. And without a second thought, Alice followed him across the field and down a deep rabbit hole, falling slowly and dreamily past shelves filled with books and maps and marmalade jars, until she landed softly on a bed of leaves, quite unharmed, in a quiet, magical place full of glowing lamps and tiny doors, and soon found herself shrinking with the help of a sweet-tasting drink from a mysterious little bottle marked "Drink Me," until she was small enough to pass through a tiny golden door that led into the most beautiful garden she had ever seen, where fountains whispered and flowers shimmered like stars. And though there were puzzling moments and strange surprises along the way, including a cake that made her grow and a key she kept forgetting, Alice felt a sense of wonder in every corner of this strange new world, as if it were built just for her dreams. And so she wandered softly among talking flowers and sparkling hedges, letting the soft breeze carry her deeper into adventure, her heart light and curious, as the world above faded gently away. And with every step into that quiet garden, she sank further into sleep, where nothing could hurt her, and all the worries of the day melted into stardust, leaving only peace, imagination, and the gentle rhythm of dreams. As Alice wandered deeper into the garden, each step felt softer than the last, as if the ground itself wanted to cradle her feet, and ahead she saw a winding path shaded by tall bluebells that swayed without wind, their petals glowing faintly like lanterns at twilight. And though she was small, no taller than a teacup, nothing felt frightening, for the world around her hummed with quiet kindness. And as she followed a curious trail of rose petals that seemed to lay themselves before her, she came upon a round table set beneath a tree, with teacups and saucers that tinkled cheerfully, as if whispering secrets. And beside the table stood a smiling figure with large, gentle eyes and a long pair of ears, who introduced himself as the March Hare. And though his words were strange and sometimes sideways, he offered her a seat and a warm cup of tea that smelled like honey and clouds. And as they poured the tea, the cups never emptied and the spoons stirred themselves, and nearby a sleepy dormouse curled up inside a sugar bowl, mumbling stories about stars and dreams. And just as Alice began to ask where the garden led, a great soft breeze swept through, carrying laughter on the air and scattering flower petals in a lazy whirl around them. And the March Hare simply smiled and said, "The path knows where to take you, even if you don't." And with that, Alice rose once again, following the path as it gently curled toward a sparkling stream where butterflies floated like paper boats, and the water whispered riddles she couldn't quite hear, but felt in her heart. And as twilight deepened into soft velvet blue, the sky above the garden lit with gentle stars that blinked slowly, as if watching over her, and all around her, the night wrapped the world in a quiet hush, a lullaby without words. And Alice, filled with wonder but growing sleepier with every step, let herself be guided by the twinkling light ahead, knowing that the story would continue in her dreams. Alice followed the soft glow ahead until it led her to a clearing surrounded by trees that shimmered as if painted with moonlight, their leaves silver and whispering songs only the stars understood. And in the center of the clearing stood a tall flower with petals that unfolded one by one like the pages of a secret book. And from its center stepped a figure no taller than her hand, a glowing little being, with wings made of dew and light, who introduced herself as Luma, the garden's storyteller. And with a voice like wind chimes, she told Alice that every dreamer who found this garden added a new tale to its sky, and that the stars overhead were not just lights, but the memories of every dream ever dreamt. And as Luma fluttered beside her, Alice listened to stories carried by the breeze, of clouds that sailed like ships over mountains that sang, of clocks that ran backward just to hear their own tick again, of libraries where books whispered their plots when opened in moonlight. And as she listened, her eyelids grew heavier, not from boredom, but from the comfort of being in a place where nothing rushed, where time stretched like warm honey and the world bent gently around curiosity. And then Luma showed her a pool that shimmered like liquid starlight, and when Alice looked into it, she didn't see her reflection. but 1,000 other versions of herself dancing through dreams, some riding owls across sunrises, others sipping cocoa beside sleeping giants or chasing laughter across marshmallow clouds. And Alice gasped softly, not out of fear, but from the strange, lovely feeling of knowing she belonged in all those dreams. And as Luma's light began to dim, she placed a single glowing petal in Alice's hand and said, "This will always lead you back." And as the garden began to hum a lullaby that sounded like the world gently exhaling, Alice laid down in a patch of soft moss that shaped itself to hold her like a cradle. And as her eyes fluttered shut, she whispered a thank you to the stars, who blinked a little brighter in return. And just before she drifted fully into sleep, she thought she heard the flowers sigh in unison, "Sweet dreams, dear Alice." And then everything faded into warmth and stillness, and the garden waited, patiently, for her return when morning came, or something like it. For time in the dream garden didn't quite follow the rules. Alice awoke to the soft hum of sunlight filtering through the leaves, not golden but the color of quiet, as if light itself had decided to tiptoe. And she found the glowing petal Luma had given her still resting in her palm, now warm and pulsing gently like a heartbeat. And as she sat up, the moss beneath her released a soft sigh, as if wishing her well, and in the air floated tiny threads of music, not played by instruments but grown by the garden itself, drifting like dandelion seeds across the morning air. And as Alice stood, the trees gently leaned apart to form a path lined with flowers that turned to face her, their petals opening as if in greeting, and she followed this path with a sense of calm and wonder, each step feeling like walking deeper into a story that remembered her name, until she reached a small arch made of ivy and stars. And when she stepped through it, the garden didn't vanish. It simply folded gently away like the last page of a book, and Alice found herself once more in her bed, tucked in tightly, the moon still hanging just outside her window, and her hand still curled around something warm and glowing. And though her room was quiet and still, she knew the dream garden was not gone, only waiting, softly and patiently, behind the veil of sleep, ready to welcome her back whenever the world outside grew too loud. And with a smile, she pulled the blanket closer to her chin, whispered a good night to no one and everyone, and let her thoughts drift like petals on a breeze. Safe, warm, and filled with wonder. That night, as Alice lay curled beneath her blanket, the glow from the petal in her hand slowly faded into a soft silver shimmer that seemed to melt into her skin like warmth from a remembered hug. And though her eyes were closed, she saw the garden again, not with sight, but with that quiet knowing that dreams sometimes bring, where Luma the petal keeper sat on a swing made of moonlight, gently brushing stardust from her wings, and she smiled at Alice through the thin veil between sleep and waking, mouthing words without sound that somehow filled the space around her with comfort, like lullabies sung by forgotten stars. And Alice felt herself float, not up or down, but inward, into that secret space inside every heart where quiet things bloom, where no one hurries and nothing hurts. And in that space the garden lived, tucked safely beneath layers of gentle dreams, where the trees hummed old songs and the sky turned colors you could only name if you had once flown with butterflies in your sleep. And as Alice drifted deeper, she understood that even when she woke, she would carry the garden with her, not in her pocket or her hand, but in the way she smiled at raindrops, or how she paused to listen to the breeze through tall grass, or when she whispered kindness to small things that no one else noticed. For the garden was not just a place she visited, but a part of who she was now, soft and curious and full of wonder. And just before morning stretched its golden fingers across the horizon, Alice whispered one last thank you to the dream that held her so gently, then exhaled, and the world, listening closely, whispered back, "Sleep well, little dreamer, the magic is never far." And so, as morning sunlight crept through the curtains in golden ribbons that danced across Alice's quilt, she stirred ever so slightly. The weight of sleep still wrapped around her like a lullaby not quite finished, and though her eyes had yet to open, she could feel the hush of the garden still blooming somewhere deep inside her, the scent of lavender and starlight lingering on the edge of her breath. And in that warm space between dreaming and waking, she thought she heard a tiny voice, perhaps Luma's or maybe her own, whispering that the world would always hold a little wonder if only you remembered how to see it. And as her toes wiggled beneath the sheets and her hand brushed against the soft petal she had clutched in her dream, she realized it was gone, yet somehow still there. As if it had melted into her like a secret she could carry forever. A reminder that magic does not live only in the wild places or the faraway forests, but also in teacups left steaming on quiet windowsills, in the way dew clings to morning grass, and in how the wind sometimes knows your name. And when she finally opened her eyes, the world looked the same but different, quieter, brighter, waiting. And Alice smiled the smallest smile, the kind that only blooms when you know something lovely no one else can quite explain. And as the day began, filled with footsteps and voices and ordinary things, she kept that smile like a lantern in her chest, a soft golden glow that flickered with every breath, for she knew now that wonder wasn't a place or a dream, but a way of seeing, and she would never again forget how to look. As Alice wandered through her morning, the world around her seemed to shimmer with a gentle magic, as if the trees, the flowers, and even the rocks themselves had stories too. Share if only she knew how to listen. Her feet carried her through the soft, green meadow, where the breeze sang a lullaby, and the birds flitted above, leaving trails of songs in the air. She smiled, feeling the warmth of the sun kiss her skin, and for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to simply be. No rushing, no worries, just the world breathing around her. As she walked, Alice passed by the old oak tree at the edge of the field, its branches stretching wide as though to embrace the sky. Beneath its shade, there was a small, hidden path, one she hadn't noticed before. Curiosity fluttered in her chest, and without a second thought, she stepped onto it, her heart light with the excitement of discovering something new. The path wound its way through the forest, the tall trees creating a canopy overhead that dappled the ground with shifting patterns of light. Alice's steps were quiet, as if she were walking through a dream, and every so often, she would catch a glimpse of something out of the corner of her eye, a flicker of movement, a flash of color. But when she looked closely, there was nothing there but the rustling of leaves and the soft murmur of the breeze. She was just about to laugh at herself for imagining things when, ahead, she noticed a small door carved into the base of a tree. It was so perfectly round and tucked away, almost hidden by the ivy that curled around it, that she might have missed it entirely if not for the golden shimmer of a tiny keyhole. The door seemed to beckon to her, and her curiosity tugged at her like an invisible thread. With a gentle push, the door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling down into the earth. Alice felt a thrill of wonder. She had no idea where this path might lead, but somehow, she knew that if she followed it, it would lead her to something magical. Without hesitation, she stepped through the door and descended into the cool, dim light beneath the tree. The air was earthy and fresh, and as her eyes adjusted to the gloom, she saw that the walls were lined with shelves, shelves of books, jars of glittering dust, and mysterious objects that seemed to hum with quiet energy. The deeper she went, the more Alice felt as though she were entering a hidden world, one that existed just beneath the surface of her own. At the bottom of the stairs, the passage opened up into a large, cavernous room, filled with an enchanting glow. In the center stood a table covered with a soft, violet cloth, and upon it, a single crystal orb that shimmered in the dim light. Alice approached it, her hand reaching out almost instinctively. As her fingers brushed against the smooth surface of the orb, a gentle warmth spread through her, and for a moment, she felt as though time itself had slowed. The world around her seemed to fade, and she was filled with a sense of calm, as though she were standing at the heart of something ancient and eternal. Just as she was about to pull her hand away, a soft voice spoke from the shadows. "You have found the heart of the forest," it said, and Alice turned to see a figure emerging from the dark corner of the room. It was an old woman, her hair long and silver, her robes flowing like the night sky, and her eyes twinkling with the knowledge of 1,000 stories. "And now, my dear," she continued, "you must decide. Will you leave with the knowledge you have gained, or will you stay and learn the secrets the forest holds?" Alice felt a surge of excitement in her chest. She had always longed to know the deeper mysteries of the world, to understand the things that could not be seen or touched. But she also knew that some secrets, once known, could never be forgotten. She thought for a moment, the weight of her decision heavy on her heart. Finally, she spoke, her voice steady and sure. "I will stay," she said, and the old woman smiled, her eyes glowing with approval. "Then welcome, Alice," she whispered. "Welcome to the forest's heart, where all things are possible, and every dream is within reach." As the old woman's words faded into the air, Alice felt a sudden shift within her. It was as if she had crossed a threshold, stepping from one reality into another, where the impossible was possible and the mundane had no place. She turned her gaze to the crystal orb, which now pulsed with a soft, rhythmic light. The air around her hummed with an energy she could feel deep in her bones, and every sense seemed heightened, as if the forest itself was alive and watching her. The old woman motioned to the orb. "This is the key to understanding the forest's heart," she said softly, her voice a mere whisper among the rustling trees. "But you must learn to listen with more than your ears, Alice. The forest speaks in silence, in feelings, in the spaces between words. Can you hear it?" Alice nodded, unsure of what the woman meant, but eager to try. She closed her eyes and stood perfectly still, breathing in the earthy scent of the chamber and letting the soft glow of the orb wash over her. For what felt like hours, she simply stood there, feeling the pulse of the forest around her, feeling the trees swaying in rhythm with her breath. She could hear the faintest whisper, not from the orb, but from within herself, that a vision slowly began to form in her mind. A path through the trees, bathed in moonlight, leading to a distant place where the stars shone brighter than she had ever seen. She saw herself walking that path, her feet light as air, her heart full of peace. She wasn't afraid, not in the least. It was as if she had always known this path, always known where it led. The old woman's voice broke through her reverie. "You have seen it, haven't you? The path that lies before you. The forest has shown you what you must do. Now, you must choose whether to walk it alone or to bring others with you. For the heart of the forest, Alice, is not just for one person. It is for all who dare to listen, to learn, and to grow." Alice opened her eyes, the vision still clear in her mind. She looked at the old woman, her heart filled with a quiet understanding. The forest had shown her a path, but it was her choice whether to walk it alone or to share it with others. And in that moment, she knew what she had to do. "I will bring others," Alice said with conviction. "I will share this magic, this beauty, with those who are ready to see it." The old woman smiled, and the crystal orb before them gleamed brighter than ever before, its light enveloping Alice in a warm embrace. "Then you have truly understood," she said, her eyes twinkling. "Go now, Alice. The forest will always be with you, as long as you carry its heart within you." With that, Alice turned and walked toward the path the forest had shown her, the moonlight guiding her steps. The trees whispered above her, the air filled with the scent of flowers and the sound of birds calling in the distance. She wasn't alone. She had the forest, the old woman's wisdom, and the knowledge that she could share this magic with the world. The journey ahead would be long and filled with unknowns, but she no longer feared the path, for Alice knew, deep in her heart, that she was exactly where she was meant to be. And with every step, the forest seemed to sing, a song of beginnings, of dreams, and of endless possibilities.